The world of Varos 9 never truly slept. The wind howled across empty plains, carrying dust that glowed faint blue under the twin moons. Captain Ethan Hale sat by the window of his small outpost cabin, watching the endless fog roll in. He was a soldier once, now just a caretaker of an old communications tower far from anyone else. He liked it quiet. No orders, no people. Just the hum of machines and the wind. But for 3 years now, he hadn't been alone. Every morning, just before dawn, there came a sound. 3 soft knocks, always the same rhythm, always at the same time, knock, 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 and every time Ethan froze. He'd open the door and she would be there, a small alien girl with pale skin that shimmered faintly in the moonlight, wearing a tattered blue cloak too big for her. Her eyes glowed golden, wide and scared, and every morning she whispered the same single word, "Daddy," then she'd vanish. He didn't know where she came from. She never left footprints in the dust. Sensors showed nothing, no life signs, no heat trace, just empty air. The first time it happened, Ethan thought it was a prank. The second time, a dream. But after the 10th time, after the 100th time, he wasn't so sure. It had been 3 long years. Every morning, without fail, she appeared. Always before dawn, always whispering that same word. "Daddy?" Ethan tried recording her with his drone once, but the footage turned to static. The sensors glitched and his drone shut down. The commander on the main base laughed when he reported it. They called it a ghost story. They said the isolation was getting to him, but Ethan knew what he saw. Her eyes. They weren't the eyes of a ghost. They were real. He started to notice small things after that. The air around his cabin would hum faintly before she came. The comms would flicker. One night the power went out completely, and in that darkness he heard her voice closer than ever before. "Daddy, please open the door." He didn't. He sat there, his hand trembling over his blaster. She never tried to enter. She just stood there in silence, then faded away again. Still each morning, she returned. The neighbors in nearby outposts began reporting strange things too. Machines powering on by themselves, radios whispering unknown words. The fog seemed thicker, heavier, like it was watching. The scientists at the Capitol called it atmospheric interference. Ethan called it something else, a warning. On the 1094th morning, Ethan decided to end it. He woke up early, cleaned his weapon, and sat by the door before the first knock came. His heart pounded. The clock ticked past 0458, 0459. Then knock, knock, knock. Ethan stood up fast and opened the door before she could vanish, and there she was. The alien girl looked up at him with frightened eyes. She looked about 8 years old, her silver hair tangled, her small hands clutching something. A metal tag with human letters etched on it. His name, Hale. Before he could speak, she swayed and collapsed into his arms. Her skin was cold, her breathing shallow. Ethan carried her inside, laying her on the couch. For the first time, he saw that her cloak was torn and burned at the edges, like from an explosion. Her small boots were covered in dried mud and faint traces of ash. He whispered softly, "Who are you?" Her golden eyes flickered open for a moment. "Daddy." She breathed weakly, then fainted again. Ethan stared at the ID tag, at the burned cloak, and at the strange glowing veins beneath her skin. None of it made sense. How could she have his name tag? How could she appear every day and yet be real? He looked out the window. The fog outside glowed brighter than usual, shifting like something alive. The communications tower began to hum on its own, sending out signals he hadn't authorized. Ethan felt a chill crawl up his spine. Something bigger was happening, something that connected this girl, his name, and the silence of Varos 9. And for the first time in years, he wasn't sure if he was the one being haunted or protected. As the sun finally broke the horizon, Ethan looked down at the small girl sleeping on his couch. Her breathing steadied. The metal tag glowed faintly. Outside, from somewhere deep in the fog, came a faint echo. 3 soft knocks. Knock, knock, knock. And the story of Varos 9 was only beginning. When the alien girl finally woke up, it was midday. The cabin was warm, sunlight spilling through the window across her pale face. Ethan sat in the corner watching quietly. He didn't want to scare her. For hours she had slept without moving, her small hands gripping that metal tag with his name like it was her only safety. He stood slowly and spoke softly. "Hey there, you're safe now." The girl blinked at him, confused. Her golden eyes darted around the room, taking in every corner, every sound. Then she whispered the same word again, "Daddy?" As if it was the only one she knew. Ethan's throat tightened. "I'm not your father," he said gently, "but I'll help you." "You don't have to be afraid," she didn't answer. She just pulled her knees to her chest and rocked slightly, humming a low tune that didn't sound human. It was haunting, like a song from a dream. Ethan called the base to report that he had found a child, alien, possibly injured. But the radio only buzzed with static. The signal was being jammed. He tried the backup channel, nothing. He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Of course. The one time I actually need help." When he looked back, the girl was staring at him again. Her golden eyes seemed to glow brighter whenever he moved. He noticed something strange on her skin, thin lines running along her neck and arms, glowing faint blue like veins of light. "What happened to you?" he whispered. The girl tilted her head but didn't answer. She touched the badge with his name and held it to her chest. Ethan tried to offer her food, simple ration cubes and warm tea. She hesitated, sniffing at first, then took tiny bites. Her hands shook, but her eyes softened a little. She hadn't eaten in days, maybe longer. When she finished, Ethan asked softly, "Where are your parents? Do you have a name?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. Instead, she looked at the door, her whole body trembling. "What is it?" he asked. She pointed toward the window. Ethan turned slowly. Outside, the fog had thickened again, rolling in like a living wall. The temperature dropped fast. The sensors on the wall began to flicker red. Something was moving in the mist. Something big. He grabbed his rifle and activated the security drone. "Stay here," he told her. "Don't move." The girl suddenly grabbed his sleeve. "No," she whispered. "Don't go." It was the first new word she had spoken. Her voice was weak, trembling. Her glowing veins pulsed brighter, like her fear was powering them. Ethan hesitated. The drone scanned the area but showed nothing. Still, the air outside felt heavy, electric. He closed the door again, locking it. "All right," he said, forcing a calm tone. "We'll stay put." The girl seemed to relax a little. She went to the window and pressed her hand against the glass. The glow from her skin made faint symbols appear on the surface. Strange markings, shifting and fading like code. Ethan stared. "How are you doing that?" No answer. She just looked out into the fog, whispering something too quiet to hear. Hours passed. She wouldn't speak. She wouldn't sleep. Every time he tried to rest, he'd feel her gaze on him. Watchful, sad, almost protective. That night, when the lights dimmed and silence filled the cabin, Ethan heard it again. Knock. Knock, knock. He froze. It came from the door, same pattern, same rhythm as always. But the girl was inside with him. She turned her head slowly, eyes wide with terror. "Who is it?" Ethan asked softly. Her lips trembled. "Them." The air around the cabin began to vibrate. The lights flickered. Ethan felt his heart pound as static filled the room. Then came a faint whisper from the radio, distorted but clear enough to hear a few words. Subject, located. Retrieve the hybrid. Ethan stared at the radio in shock. He looked back at the girl who was now crying silently, shaking her head. "They found me," she whispered. "Please, don't let them take me." Ethan reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I won't," he said. "You're safe here." But outside, the fog moved closer. Shadows flickered within it. Tall, thin figures carrying lights that weren't human. And as the night swallowed Veros 9 again, Ethan realized this was no ghost story. The girl wasn't lost. She was being hunted. By morning, the fog around Ethan's cabin was gone, but the air felt strange. Too quiet, too clean. The alien girl sat on the couch, still clutching his badge like it was a lifeline. She hadn't spoken another word since the night before, only stared at the door as if expecting someone. Or something. To come through it. Ethan checked the scanners again. Every system showed a blank reading. No life forms, no ships, no signals. It was impossible. Something had been out there. He felt it. He finally managed to contact the base. Static cleared and a voice answered. "Captain Hale, you've been off-grid for 12 hours. What's going on out there?" Ethan didn't want to say too much. "I found a child," he said carefully. "Alien origin." She's scared. "Possibly injured? Alien?" The voice grew sharp. "Where is she now?" "With me," Ethan said. "Understood. Stay put, team's on the way." He froze. A team meant scientists. Lab coats. People who didn't ask questions. They just took things apart. When the team arrived an hour later, their ship landed with a hiss of white vapor. 4 men in sealed suits stepped out, carrying scanners and weapons. The girl hid behind Ethan instantly, shaking. Her small hands glowed faint blue, her fear visible. "Easy," Ethan said, kneeling beside her. "They won't hurt you." But when one of the scientists raised his scanner, it beeped wildly. "Captain, step away from the subject," the leader ordered. "She's radiating unstable bioenergy. You might be contaminated." Ethan stood his ground. "She's a kid, not a bomb." "That's not a child," the scientist said coldly. "That's a hybrid organism. Look at these readings. Part human, part unknown genome." "She shouldn't exist," the girl whimpered. The blue light under her skin flickered faster. Ethan's heart pounded. "You're scaring her. Put that thing down." But they didn't. The leader pressed a button on his wrist console and metal restraints shot out, trying to lock around her. Before Ethan could react, every light in the cabin exploded. Sparks rained down. The air filled with the sound of humming energy. The restraints froze mid-air, then melted like wax. The scientist stumbled back, terrified. Turn it off," one shouted. Ethan grabbed the girl and pulled her behind him. She was crying now, the glow from her body pulsing with every heartbeat. "Get out," Ethan roared. The team retreated, dragging their equipment, whispering into their radios. One of them pointed at the girl. "She's dangerous. Look what she did." When the door slammed shut behind them, Ethan turned to her. Her eyes were full of tears. "I didn't mean to," she said softly. "They hurt me before. I didn't want it to happen again." Ethan knelt in front of her. "It's okay. You're safe here." She sniffled and nodded, but her small voice trembled. "They'll come back." He didn't doubt it. Later that evening, he received a coded message from command. It wasn't friendly. "Captain Hale, the alien subject is classified as a level 5 threat. Do not engage. Containment order in progress. Evacuation team inbound." He read the message 3 times, then deleted it. When night came, Ethan sat by the window again. The girl slept on the couch, wrapped in his old blanket. Outside, red warning lights blinked faintly in the fog. Military transports. They were already coming. Ethan's comms buzzed again, but this time it wasn't command. A different voice whispered through the static. Low, mechanical, almost inhuman. "You have what belongs to us." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Who is this?" No answer. Only the same phrase repeated like an echo. "You have what belongs to us." Then silence. The girl stirred in her sleep, mumbling something in a language he couldn't understand. For a moment, her skin shimmered with strange patterns, symbols that looked almost like data. Ethan reached for his scanner, but it shut off on its own. He looked at her small sleeping form and felt a heavy truth settle in his chest. She wasn't just lost. She wasn't just different. She was the center of something much bigger, something both sides wanted to control. And if command was calling her a threat, maybe they didn't know she was only a child. Ethan turned off the lights, loaded his weapon, and locked the door. "They're not taking you," he whispered. Outside, the fog moved again, slow, alive, watching. The next morning, Varos 9 woke under a red sky. The clouds burned faint orange and a low hum spread through the air, like thunder trapped in the distance. Ethan stood outside his cabin, his rifle slung over his shoulder, scanning the horizon. Something was wrong. Even the fog was gone, replaced by silence. Behind him, the alien girl watched from the window, her golden eyes reflecting the strange sky. She looked frightened, but not surprised. Ethan turned to her. "You said last night, they'll come back." "Who's coming?" She hesitated. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "The ones who made me," he frowned. "Made you? You mean your people?" She shook her head slowly. "Not them, not mine. Not yours. The ones in between." Before Ethan could ask more, his comms unit lit up with emergency code. "Alert, unidentified strike detected in orbit. Evacuate base sectors immediately." His blood turned cold. No. He ran outside, raising his scope toward the far valley where the science labs were located. Then out of nowhere, a bright beam of light split the clouds. A burning column fell from the sky, hitting the ground miles away. The explosion rolled across the plains like a second sunrise. The shock wave hit seconds later, throwing Ethan back, shaking the ground, shattering the windows of his cabin. The girl screamed, clutching her ears. When the dust settled, Ethan looked toward the horizon. The science facility was gone, all of it. A smoking crater stretched where the labs used to be. He grabbed the comms again. "Base command! This is Hale, come in!" Only static. Then a faint voice came through, broken and filled with fear. "Command center hit, not human. Repeat, not..." The line went dead. Ethan stared at the smoking sky. "Not human," he repeated softly. Then he turned toward the girl who sat trembling by the wall. Her small hands were glowing again, the veins under her skin pulsing gold. "They found me," she whispered. "They don't want anyone to know I'm alive." Ethan knelt beside her. Who are they?" Her eyes filled with tears. "The ones who made me fight. The ones who built me to end wars." He didn't understand, but he could see she was in pain. Her body was heating up, the glow from her skin bright enough to light the room. Ethan quickly fetched cold water and poured it over her arms. The light dimmed a little. "Breathe," he said softly. "You're safe here." But she shook her head, gripping his sleeve. "No one is safe. When they find me, they burn everything." Outside, more explosions echoed in the distance, smaller, scattered. Ethan could see ships in the upper sky now, dark shapes darting between the clouds. Not human models. Sleek, sharp, alive-looking. One of them circled overhead, its shadow passing over the cabin. Ethan ducked low and pulled the girl under the table. "Don't move," he whispered. "Stay quiet." The ship's light swept across the land, pausing briefly over his cabin. A red beam scanned through the walls, humming softly. Ethan held his breath. The girl covered her mouth, her eyes squeezed shut. Then just as suddenly, the light turned off. The ship moved on. Ethan exhaled, trying to steady his heartbeat. "That was close." The girl looked up at him. "They didn't see us." "You hid me," he smiled faintly. "Guess I did." For the first time, she gave a small, shaky smile back. But then the ground trembled again. This time deeper, like something massive was descending. The girl gasped and clutched her chest. No, they sent the hunters." Ethan looked out the window. From the smoke of the crater, dark figures emerged. Tall, metallic, walking like men but with glowing eyes and long weapons that hissed with energy. "What are they?" he whispered. She swallowed hard. "Machines that remember me." Before he could react, the power went out. The whole cabin fell into darkness. Only the faint glow from her skin lit the room. Outside, the machines spread out, scanning the ground. Their voices were mechanical but clear. "Target designation, Prototype 07, priority retrieval. Prototype 07. Ethan stared at her in shock. "That's you?" She nodded weakly. "I was made to destroy your world. But I ran away." Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed his rifle, pulled open a hidden hatch in the floor, and motioned for her to climb down. "Then you're not going back," he said firmly. "You're with me now." The girl hesitated, then crawled into the dark tunnel beneath the cabin. Ethan followed, sealing the hatch above them as the sound of metal footsteps drew near. The cabin shook as the machines entered. The air filled with static. Ethan whispered to her in the dark, "No matter what happens, stay close." She nodded, whispering back, "You're not my maker, but you're my protector." And as the fire rained once more over the plains of Varos 9, Ethan realized the truth. This wasn't just a rescue. It was the beginning of a war. The tunnels beneath Ethan's cabin were old. They had been built during the first colonization of Varos 9, back when humans feared war with the native species. The air was cold and damp. The faint light from the girl's skin glowed just enough for them to see. Ethan led the way, rifle ready, listening to the echoes of the machines above. Every step sent dust falling from the ceiling. Somewhere behind them, metal feet thudded, steady and patient. The hunters were tracking them. "We'll reach the comm station soon," Ethan whispered. "From there I can contact off-world rescue." The girl shook her head. "They'll hear you. They always hear." Ethan slowed and turned to her. "How do you know that?" She looked down at her small hands, still faintly glowing. "Because I was made to listen to everything." Her words chilled him. He wanted to ask more, but the tunnel narrowed ahead. They squeezed through until they reached an old command bunker, dark, filled with dead screens and dusty terminals. Ethan wiped one off and tried to power it. To his surprise, the lights flickered on. "Finally," he muttered. He typed a few commands, trying to access any remaining data. The girl stood quietly behind him, watching the flickering light. Then the old computer beeped. Access granted. Project Seraph 07 Ethan froze. His name appeared next. Captain E. Hale. Priority clearance. He stared at the screen. How? I was never assigned to any Seraph project. The girl stepped closer. Her voice was soft. Yes, you were. You just don't remember. What are you talking about? Ethan asked, his heart pounding. The screen changed again. Old log files opened, video records, dates from 10 years ago. He pressed play. A room appeared, white and cold. Scientists in protective suits surrounded a containment pod. Inside the pod was the same girl. Smaller, weaker, with wires in her skin. A man in uniform stood beside the pod, looking uncertain, his hand resting on the glass. Ethan gasped. It was him. The man on screen spoke, voice low but clear. Test subject shows emotional imprinting on human caretaker. Responds only to name Daddy. Proceeding with shutdown. The girl inside screamed. The lights in the lab exploded and the feed cut to static. Ethan stared at the screen, frozen. His voice cracked. No, that can't be real. The girl's eyes shimmered with tears. It's real. They made me call you that, but you were kind. You didn't want them to hurt me. He stepped back, feeling dizzy. I left the service after the treaty war. They told me I was reassigned. They erased you, she said quietly. Your memories. Because you tried to free me. Ethan's stomach twisted. The pieces began to fit. The missing months in his record, the strange flashes of déjà vu when she first said Daddy. He thought it was coincidence. It wasn't. He looked at her again. You're saying I helped create you? She shook her head. No, you protected me. They used your DNA to make me. The words hit like thunder. My DNA? She nodded. That's why I look human. That's why I found you. The bunker lights dimmed suddenly. The screens blinked red. Alert. Signal lock. They found us, Ethan said, snapping the terminal shut. The girl grabbed his hand. We can't run anymore. You have to let me finish what they started. What does that mean? He asked. She lifted her glowing hand. They built me to destroy worlds. But if I change it, if I burn the code, they'll never make another like me. You'll die, Ethan said instantly. She smiled sadly. Maybe, but you won't. The sound of the hunters grew closer, metal scraping, voices repeating. Target proximity, 50 meters. Ethan crouched, checking his rifle. No, we're not doing this your way. He looked at her, fierce and certain. You didn't survive all this just to give up. You're not a weapon anymore. You're my kid. Her eyes widened. You mean that? He nodded. Yeah, I do. For a moment, her golden eyes brightened, not with fear but with warmth. Then I'll fight, she whispered. For you. The wall behind them cracked open as an explosion tore through the tunnel. The hunters had found the bunker. Ethan grabbed her hand and ran through the smoke. And somewhere deep inside the destroyed base, another file came to life, automatically uploaded to every surviving human outpost. Project Seraph 07 termination order overridden. Primary guardian identified Captain Ethan Hale. The tunnels shook as explosions echoed from above. Dust rained down and the air filled with static and heat. Ethan pulled the alien girl, Seraph, through the narrow passage, his heart hammering. Behind them, the metal hunters were getting closer, their glowing eyes cutting through the darkness like fire. Keep moving, Ethan said, voice rough from smoke. Seraph's small hand glowed brighter, lighting the tunnel. They're closing the exits, she said softly. They know every path. Then we make a new one, Ethan replied. He pulled a grenade from his belt and threw it behind them. The blast collapsed part of the tunnel, sealing it in a cloud of dust. They stumbled into a larger chamber, a forgotten cargo bay buried under the old colony. Broken crates, rusted machinery, and half-dead power cells filled the room. Ethan dragged a metal sheet aside, revealing an old Land Rover under a tarp. This still runs, he muttered. He climbed in, rewiring the controls with shaking hands. The engine coughed once, then came to life with a low rumble. He smiled for the first time in hours. Get in, Seraph hesitated, looking back toward the tunnel. They won't stop. I don't plan to let them catch us, Ethan said. She climbed in beside him, her eyes glowing faint gold. The vehicle roared forward, smashing through an old service door into the open desert. For the first time in days, Ethan saw the sky clearly. The stars burned red and blue above, and the horizon glowed with distant fire. Varos 9 looked broken, Cities burning, ships crashing, the world falling apart. Seraph turned her head slightly. "They're fighting up there," she whispered. "Your people and mine." Ethan gritted his teeth. "Doesn't matter who wins if we die down here." As they sped across the plains, a dark shadow passed over them. He looked up, one of the alien ships hunting. It released a swarm of drones that shot toward them like black comets. "Hold on," Ethan yelled. He swerved hard, the rover bumping over cracked ground. The drones fired beams of red light, slicing the sand around them. One beam hit the back of the rover, melting part of the engine. The vehicle jerked and began to slow. Seraph pressed her glowing hands against the dashboard. The lights flickered. Then somehow the engine roared louder, stronger. Ethan glanced at her in shock. "What did you just do?" She looked pale, her eyes dimming. "I gave it life. Just a little." The rover sped forward again, but Seraph leaned back weakly, breathing hard. "Don't stop," she whispered. Ethan reached over, steadying her. "You're not dying on me, kid. Not now." Suddenly a voice came over the comm, human, desperate. "Captain Hale, are you alive? We've been tracking an unknown signal. Your beacon's still active." Ethan grabbed the mic. "Command, it's me. I've got the prototype." "It's a child, not a weapon." Static, then the voice again. "Negative. Orders from High Command. Terminate the hybrid immediately." "You cannot bring it in." Ethan's stomach turned. "Say that again." "Terminate the hybrid, Captain." "That's a direct order." He shut the comm off. The silence inside the rover was heavy. Seraph looked at him quietly. "They want me gone too." He met her gaze. "They're wrong." The alien ship behind them was getting closer. The rover's engine screamed as it hit its limit. Ethan saw the entrance to the old mountain mines ahead, a network of caves that could hide them. He aimed for it, pushing the rover harder. The first missile hit the ground beside them, throwing up a wall of fire. The second hit behind them, flipping the vehicle into the air. Ethan grabbed Seraph and shielded her as the rover slammed into the sand and rolled. Everything went black. When he opened his eyes, the night was silent, except for the crackle of flames. The rover was destroyed. Seraph lay beside him, barely conscious. He lifted her in his arms and stumbled toward the caves, his legs shaking. Every step hurt, but he didn't stop. From the ridge above, the alien ship hovered, scanning the ground. Its searchlights passed just over them, but didn't see. Inside the cave, Ethan laid Seraph down and leaned against the rock wall, breathing hard. "You're safe," he whispered. "They won't find us here." Seraph opened her eyes slowly. "They will," she said faintly. "But next time, I won't run." Ethan looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" Her small hand glowed brighter again, and strange symbols appeared on the rock around them, circles, lines, and stars forming a pattern. "It's time you see what I really am," she whispered, "and what I must do." Outside, thunder rolled across the broken desert. The war for Veros 9 had begun. The night passed like a storm that would not end. Lightning flashed over the mountains, and the sound of explosions echoed far away. Inside the cave, Ethan sat awake beside the small alien girl, Seraph, who lay weak but calm, her faint golden glow flickering like a dying candle. He had wrapped her in his old jacket, his arm around her shoulders. The cold wind outside carried the smell of dust and burned metal. Veros 9 was dying, but he didn't care about the world anymore. He cared about the child who called him Daddy. At dawn, a pale light touched the entrance of the cave. The red clouds from the night before had faded. Silence hung over the land. The war sounds had stopped. Seraph opened her eyes slowly. "It's quiet," she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe it's over." She shook her head. "Not yet." Before he could ask what she meant, the walls of the cave began to hum. The glowing symbols she had drawn the night before came alive, shining like stars on stone. Ethan stepped back as the air grew warm. "What's happening?" he asked. Seraph sat up slowly, her hands glowing brighter. "I connected to the world, to everything they built, and everything they broke. I can stop the fighting. I can stop the sky from burning." Ethan knelt beside her. "You'll kill yourself if you try." She smiled softly, a tired, peaceful smile. "I was made to destroy, but maybe I can end destruction instead." He shook his head. "No, there has to be another way." She looked up at him, her golden eyes steady. "You taught me what another way means. You showed me kindness. That's why I can do this." Her small fingers touched his cheek. "You were never my maker, but you became my father. Ethan's throat tightened. Seraph, don't do this, please. The mountain shook again. Outside, he could hear engines, both human and alien, closing in. The hunters were coming for the last time. Seraph stood up, her bare feet glowing against the cold rock floor. The light from her body grew stronger, filling the entire cave with a warm golden hue. They'll come for me forever unless I change what I am. Ethan grabbed her shoulders, desperate. If you go out there, they'll kill you. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. Then they'll finally stop killing each other. Before he could stop her, she stepped toward the mouth of the cave. The morning sun hit her skin, and for a moment she looked like pure light. No longer alien, no longer human, but something greater. Ethan stumbled after her, shouting her name. Seraph. But she turned once and smiled, the kind of smile that broke his heart and healed it all at once. Thank you, Daddy. Then she raised her arms to the sky. The light exploded outward, silent and endless. It washed across the mountains, the burned fields, the wreckage of ships and bases. Every weapon, every machine, every hunter stopped moving. Their lights dimmed. Their power cores went still. The alien ships in the sky turned dark. The human stations powered down. For one long moment, all of Varos 9 was covered in light. And then, it was gone. The silence that followed was heavy. Almost holy, Ethan blinked through tears, staring at the empty space where Seraph had stood. There was no body. Only her small necklace. The tag with his name lay glowing faintly on the stone. He picked it up, holding it tight against his chest. His voice broke as he whispered, "You did it, kid." Days later, search teams found him sitting outside the cave, staring at the horizon. The skies above Varos 9 were blue again, truly blue for the first time in centuries. The scanners picked up a strange energy shield surrounding the planet, one that no one could explain. It kept everything out, but it also kept the world safe. Ethan never talked about what happened. He stayed on Varos 9, alone in the cabin where it had all begun. Every morning at dawn, the same sound echoed through the fog outside his door. Knock, knock, knock. He'd open the door to nothing, no footprints, no shadow, but he'd always whisper softly, "Good morning, kid." And sometimes, just sometimes, the wind would carry back a faint voice. "Daddy?" He'd smile then, knowing she was still there, somewhere beyond the light, watching over the quiet world she saved. Varos 9 lived again because one small hybrid girl believed in kindness, and one human refused to stop believing in her.